Number 1. This is a long one, but was so bizarre I think it's worth telling. I wanted to post it because this person recently tried to friend my now husband on Facebook, and it brought back crazy memories and I need to vent it out. I got married right at 18. I was a pretty book-smart kid, but lacked street smarts. By the time I turned 20, my now ex-husband and I had moved into a rental property in a pretty nice suburb outside Chicago. In the basement of the house was a big mother-in-law suite, where a good male friend of ours, Nick, lived as well. I was about halfway through nursing school at this time. This particular semester of nursing school, I had a very early clinical rotation once a week. I was 21 at the time. I am not a morning person, so in order to maximize the amount of time I spent asleep, I started loading all my stuff into the car the night before. Bags, books, and even my purse. Again, street smarts lacking. One particular night before clinicals, I asked my ex-husband Bobby to get a book from my car. Bob does, but forgets to lock the door. The next morning, when I get into my car, I notice that my purse is gone. I end up filing a police report. I was most concerned because I had just gotten this new job as a nurse's aide at a hospital, and I had my social security card still sitting in my wallet. Strike 3 for street smarts. Almost immediately after the theft, strange things started happening. We started getting ding-dong ditches all hours of the day and night. Someone vandalized mine, Nick's, and Bob's cars with strange graffiti, Nazi swastikas, hangmen, etc. They also egged our house and slashed Nick's tires. We first chalked it up to neighborhood pranksters, but when we started having damages that cost some decent money, we called the police. Not to mention one day when Bob was mowing the lawn, he noticed piles of cigarette butts outside the bedroom window. The police came out, pretty much did nothing but take a report and told us to perhaps invest in car alarms and some brighter floodlights for the driveway. A few weeks after this, at 2:30 in the morning, I get a call on my cell. It was the police in a neighboring town. They had picked up someone who had my ID on him, someone named Craig J. When they asked why he had someone else's ID on him, he claimed that I was his girlfriend. The cop called me because my name had popped up that I'd filed a police report for theft. I assured the cops I'd never heard of him before, and was told I could pick up my ID at the police station within the next few days. Things really started to escalate at that point, but I didn't make the connection that perhaps these incidents were related. I started getting strange messages on MySpace, this was in 2009, as well as on Facebook, from clearly fake accounts, with long-winded messages that made no sense. This person started messaging friends of mine as well. I deleted MySpace and blocked the person on Facebook, but new accounts kept getting created. Somehow this person got my email address and started sending me emails as well. I had no idea who this person could be, but they seemed to know details about me that indicated that this was either someone I knew or knew someone I knew. The messages weren't overtly threatening, but creepy enough to where I started becoming uncomfortable. One night, my friend Lauren and I were sitting on the couch watching TV. Bob, Lauren's husband, and a few other friends had gone out for the night. As we're sitting around chilling, we hear something that sounds like someone shaking the garage door. It was an attached garage. I go and check the garage. Nothing seems out of the ordinary. We had occasional issues with raccoons, so I chalked it up to that. But the noise keeps continuing. Lauren and I are getting freaked out at this point. Now, understand the layout of the house. It was a modern-style ranch house with no upstairs. The garage sounds moved now to the kitchen window, a distinct sound of someone knocking or scratching hard on the windows. We call our husbands, who did not answer. At this point, we debate calling the police. What if it's an animal or tree branches? We don't want to seem stupid. As we debate, I see Lauren's face go sheet white and look past me. I spin around and I can see the fortunately locked handle on the front door wiggling. We were seated near the kitchen. We jump up. Lauren grabs a knife from the butcher block on the counter. I grab a small hammer from the junk drawer. We book it to the back of the house where the bedrooms are, cell phone in hand, and lock ourselves in one of the bedrooms and call the police. The dispatcher tells us to stay on the line, move furniture in front of the door if possible, and the police are on the way. We shove a dresser in front of the door. Knife and hammer in hand, we agreed if this fucker was going to come in, he might be bigger or stronger than us, but he's not going down without a fight. We plan that if he gets in before the cops, I'll go for his head with the hammer, and she'll go for his gut with the knife. Cops show up banging on the front door shouting police. We can see the red and blue lights through the window. We leave the room and let the cops in, and they find no signs of anyone present or evidence of an attempted break-in. They take a report. In the meanwhile, our husbands finally call us back, and they come home and the cops leave. Flash forward a few months. A very close friend of ours, Sean, was renovating his apartment and needed a place to crash along with his girlfriend. Bob and I decided he could stay in the third bedroom in our house. The first night Sean stays with us, we are woken at 2 in the morning by Sean screaming at someone. Bob and I jump out of bed and rush into the hall and to Sean's room. Sean and his girl are wide awake, lights on, looking totally freaked out. The screen is sliced and flopping in the wind. Sean told us he woke up to someone using what he thought was a knife on the screen and started climbing in through the window. We call the cops, and they come out and they take a statement. Sean describes the guy as best as he could. A white male, young-looking, semi-shaved head with what looked like darker hair. Cops dust for prints. Comes back as a match for Craig J. Turns out I knew who he was, vaguely. He was a year younger than me, and we had gone to the same high school, but I couldn't remember having any significant interactions with him. He lived with his parents only a few blocks from my house. I ended up reaching out to high school acquaintances who knew him, and they remembered him as nice, but odd. Kind of quiet, but definitely on the strange side, who dropped out of school before graduation. Upon realizing that Sean had just moved in, the cop makes a statement that chilled us all. He probably didn't realize anyone was staying in this bedroom, and thought the room would be empty. Cops go there, arrest him. He suddenly has quite the story for them. Him and I were secret lovers. I was ignoring him, and we had a relationship. He also had been allowed into my home many times. I am floored. He gets charged with something like trespassing or breaking and entering, and does light time for it, maybe a month, and has to pay a fine. In the meanwhile, I get a restraining order on him. He gets out, and I hear nothing from him. I also develop a completely irrational fear of first-floor windows. Around Christmas of 2010, I am now 23. I figure the whole Craig thing is in the past. Bob and I decide to divorce, completely unrelated to this, and go our separate ways, and Nick has long since moved out. We end the lease. I move to a less desirable suburb, but with affordable rent. I settle on an apartment in a 4-unit building that has a locked entrance, and the only way in was with a key or with someone opening the door from the inside. I lived on the 2nd floor. By this time, I had graduated and was now a nurse and was working now at a nursing home. Spring to summer of 2010. It started up again, with calls coming through to me at work, only to have someone hang up. Letters suddenly appeared in the staff-only mailbox, mailed to me with no return address. The strange emails started up again from random accounts. The messages were never overtly threatening, but they were long, way too frequent, way too out there. He spoke to me as if we were long-lost friends and had some sort of connection. I don't think he ever threatened to hurt me, although the cutting into the house with a knife, I don't know what was going through his mind. What I kinda seemed to piece together over the years, from all his rambling, is that he had some sort of crush on me when I was younger, although I never remember even speaking to him during high school. And him happening to rob my car was some sort of sign from the universe or something that we were meant to be together. I call the cops. They basically tell me that because there have been no threats, and other than an OOP or cease and desist, there's not much they can do except watch and wait. This goes on for a while, and finally, one night, I wake up at 2 in the morning to the doorbell ringing. I'm instantly in a panic. I look out the window. There, illuminated in the floodlight, is Craig. I burst out crying. In my half-awake state, I run across the hall and start banging on my neighbor's door. He was an older divorced guy who lived alone. He goes downstairs and confronts Craig and tells him the cops have been called, and I actually call the cops. Craig takes off. I filed a report and they claim they will talk to him, but this only makes things worse. Friends I have on Facebook now start getting random messages from Craig asking about me, telling them he has important information for me. Other times he alternates saying that I owe him money and I have a debt I need to pay off. My friends block him as he goes along. Meanwhile, my younger sister is living in the city with a few friends. He somehow finds out where and drives to her apartment and confronts her while she has people over. She freaks out and they kick him out. She calls the cops, who basically again say that he didn't commit a crime but offer her a restraining order. Right after this, another incident. My younger cousin is a high school senior on the cross-country team. He shows up at my cousin's practice. My cousin has no clue who he is. He starts demanding information on me, and the coach gets involved, and Craig gets in a fight with the coach. The cops are called and he's banned from the school grounds, but nothing more. He calls the nursing home administrator at my job, asking him to talk to me and tell him that he has important information to tell me. The administrator and my work, now aware of the situation, tells him not to come onto the property or he will have him arrested for trespassing. At this point, I'm paranoid beyond measure. Then, just as quickly as it started, it faded off. It's now summer of 2012 and the final chapter in this saga. I'm almost 25 now. A friend of mine named Stacy, and incidentally Sean's ex, moved in with me temporarily while she was looking for a place. She was dating a new guy and spent quite a few nights at his place. One night, I picked up a double shift starting at 7 a.m. and ending at 11:30 p.m. Stacy texts me around 3:30 p.m. stating she won't be home that night and was going out with her guy. I arrive home at almost midnight. First thing I notice is that the door is unlocked. Uneasy. But thinking perhaps Stacy had just forgotten to lock it, I cautiously peer inside. I pan my gaze to the kitchen and living room. I can't shake the feeling that I'm unsettled. Something wasn't sitting right. Due to all of these incidents, I always made sure that 1 or 2 lights were on, even when we weren't home. I was still not even fully in the door when I noticed that I was staring into a pitch-black apartment, and immediately my brain went into full panic. I'm glad it did. Realistically, Stacy could have forgotten to leave a light on, but my instincts were in overdrive and sounding off 5 alarm fire bells. My Puerto Rican neighbor who lived in one of the building units was known for his weekend parties, and I could hear a party going on downstairs. I book it down the stairs and bust into the party and tell him what happened. He looks at me like I'm crazy, but agrees to come upstairs with me. We get inside and he looks around. We see nobody. I'm starting to wonder if I'm just nuts. Maybe Stacy had her boyfriend over and they left in a hurry, forgetting to turn on the low lights and lock the door. He agrees with me and sort of jokingly pulls open the pantry door. What I saw next will never, ever leave my mind. There, crouched inside, is Craig. Puerto Rican neighbor puts the guy in a chokehold. I call the police. To this day, I have no idea what he planned on doing. Cops come out and he's arrested. Because my neighbor was having a party, he had the door open to the alleyway. Chances are, he just walked into the building, and if anyone even noticed, people would just assume he was there for the party or whatever. It's more confusing how he got into the apartment itself. My theory is, my roommate at the time was from the country. While I lived in a suburb, it was the type of suburb right on the edge of a major US city, so we always locked our doors, and generally kept everything secured as a rule. She was used to leaving her doors unlocked and wide open, and I think honestly it may have just slipped her mind when she went out the door for the night. I confronted her about it, and of course she denied it, but that's really the only logical way he could have gotten in. I always locked both the knob lock and the deadbolt whenever I left the house. Unless he was a skilled locksmith, I have no idea how he could have gotten in. I didn't stay alone or go anywhere by myself for a long time after that. I feel that I actually developed a paranoia because of all of this, and was highly suspicious of giving my number or any information out to anyone. He ended up being charged and convicted of aggravated stalking, breaking and entering, and some other charges. I did meet his parents in court, who were both shockingly very normal, apologetic people. They tried explaining their son. They claimed he was mentally ill and suffered from bipolar disorder. When he's medicated, he's okay. When he's off his meds, he's nuts. After he served time, I did not hear from him for years until 2016 when he found me on Facebook. I was much older now, around 29. I replied to him very firmly that any contact would end in the police being called and that I had no interest in him at all. I blocked him in any way I could. Recently, he found my new husband on Facebook and friended him. He blocked him as well. To this day, I still have paranoia. I had parked my car near a baseball diamond once. Some kids most likely hit a baseball into my windshield and took off because I had a perfectly baseball-sized spider crack on the glass. Despite it being completely logical that it most likely was a ball, I instantly reverted to, oh God, is he back? I have no idea what happened to him. I also am now a total psycho about keeping things locked. Twice my life got screwed up because doors weren't locked. My car door, and most likely my apartment door. I have an acquaintance monitor him on Facebook. His page is not private, and from what I have seen, he appears to go through periods where he is pretty inactive, and then episodes where he's rambling, overposting, oversharing, and acting generally deranged. I believe his parents were telling the truth when they said when he's medicated, he's okay. Part of me feels bad for him. I'm older now, and I've been a nurse for almost 10 years, some of which time was spent in a psych specialty. The mind is a hell of a thing. Looking back though, those were some of the worst years of my adult life. He put me through a lot of anxiety and caused a lot of issues for me. I slept with my couch pushed against my apartment door for the next 2 years before I moved out of there. I'm now married, but on nights where I'm home alone, I still find myself resisting the urge to stack furniture in front of the doors. One of the other fallouts from this situation, Craig either sold, lost, or gave away my social security card that had been in my purse. Someone tried to file for Medicaid benefits in Arizona using my name and social, as well as obtained a job using my social and failed to pay any taxes, leaving me with a surprise asset freeze by the IRS and a whole financial mess that needed to be untangled before they unfroze my accounts and paid me back the money they started to pull out of my paychecks for back taxes I had nothing to do with. My credit got extremely messed up for years because of it, and to this day I have a lock on my social security number and monitor all my accounts like a hawk. The moral of the story, never leave your purse in your car, always lock your doors. Number 2. My mom owns her own business and works extremely hard. This means she spends many late nights sitting on the living room floor with her work sprawled out around her. One night, back in 2003, she had her typical routine going, sorting through paperwork and making piles. It was late, close to midnight on a Wednesday, so when the phone rang, she was a bit surprised. My dad worked third shift at a factory, so she assumed it was him. When she answered the phone, there was no reply, just lots of heavy breathing. Admittedly creeped out, she hung up and called my dad. He told her he hadn't called, and she left it at that. Keep in mind, this was almost 15 years ago, and we lived in a small town with practically no crime. We never locked our doors, and we were never scared of dangerous people. But the phone calls kept coming, every night, multiple times a night, and the person on the other end started talking. He started by saying, "Hello, Diane. You're so beautiful. I'd love to meet you." And things quickly escalated into him going into graphic detail of how he wanted to rape and strangle her. Of course, she stopped answering the phone, and she informed the police, but nothing was ever done, and the phone would continue to ring. My parents weren't in the situation where my dad could stay home from work, and my mom truly believed the calls were just empty threats, so things continued on. Until one night he got brave. My mom was sitting on the floor in front of our huge mirrored cabinet with all of her work around her when the phone rang. She ignored it as usual. She was concentrating hard on a piece of paper in front of her when a glimmer of light in the mirror caught her eye. She looked up to see a pair of eyeglasses peering at her in the reflection. She spun around to face the front door, which her back had been turned to, and a man was standing there staring at her. She said they both just stared at each other for what felt like forever until she saw the doorknob turn. She started screaming, and the man quickly ran away. In light of the phone calls, my parents had started locking all doors, which was a totally foreign concept to our household. My older brother, who was about 17 at the time and was aware of the phone calls, came running down the stairs with a baseball bat, but the man was long gone. When the police came, they scoured our property and came across close to 200 cigarette butts right underneath our living room windows, hidden behind bushes. He had been watching her for weeks. The police also happened to find a bike tire trail coming from the windows and going down the sidewalk. They took the cigarette butts and did DNA testing on them, and they were able to match them to a convicted rapist who lived down the street from us. Robert Ham was arrested while riding his bike. He went to prison for menacing and attempt to commit a crime. He had many priors, so we assumed he would be locked up for quite some time. The reason I'm telling this story is because he was released from prison earlier this year. Number 3. This happened a few days ago, and I'm still pretty shaken about it. I only just thought to post it here, so here it goes. On Friday afternoon, I got a call from my friend named Sarah asking if I wanted to meet her and another friend named Lisa at Dunkin' Donuts, as we hadn't seen one another in a while. Dunkin' Donuts is a 15-minute walk from my house, so I decided I would walk. Besides, the weather was fine. I got to Dunkin' Donuts and found where Sarah and Lisa were sat, so I joined them. As we were chatting, I noticed that my sister Elena was sat at the table in the corner of the room with her friend Jess. For some context, my sister and her friend are both 18 years old. My sister still lives with my parents, whereas I live alone. I excused myself from the table and went over to Elena and Jess's table. They were sat at a table with 3 seats, so I went to sit down and said hey. They both jumped a little bit, but then looked more relieved than anything to see me. Immediately, Elena whispered to me, "Don't look now, but the guy in the blue shirt, he's been following Jess and I." I glanced over and saw the middle-aged man sat at a table facing away from us. "He's passed our table a good 5 times in the past 20 minutes to go to the bathroom, but he walks slower as he passes us," she continued. I told them that they were most likely being paranoid and that there was nothing to worry about, but for their peace of mind, I offered to leave with them so they wouldn't feel as worried. I walked back over to my table and explained the situation to Sarah and Lisa. Both of them laughed it off and assumed my sister to be paranoid. Literally, about a minute later, I saw the man get up from his seat and walk towards the bathroom. My eyes followed him, and sure enough, he walked extremely slow past Elena and Jess. In fact, it was almost comical how obviously slow he became. Both Elena and Jess looked in my direction, and I nodded to show that I had seen him walk slower. About 5 minutes later, I went into the toilets. On my way, I passed Elena and Jess and told them I was ready to leave whenever they were. They both agreed that they were ready to leave now. I told them that I was just going to the bathroom and that we could leave after I had done my business. Elena had come in her car, so she was going to give me a lift back. I went into the toilet stall, did said business, washed my hands. I was walking down the corridor back into the main eating area when Elena and Jess rushed into the corridor. I asked them what's up and they explained that another man had joined the strange creeper man and that the men were both pointing and staring at them, so they rightfully felt unsafe. We walked back into the eating area. I put my money on our table and explained to Lisa and Sarah that I was taking off and I would explain what was going on when I got home. We all got into Elena's car and left the creeps in the car's rearview mirror. After a 2-minute drive, we reached my house. Just then I had remembered that I had been meaning to return something I had borrowed from my mother, so I asked Elena if I could drive to my parents' house, as she was going there anyway. I jumped out of the car to get what I needed when my phone rang. It was Elena. She explained that a car had driven past and pulled into a driveway. She said the driver of the vehicle was the creep from Dunkin' Donuts. I looked out of my window and sure enough, there was a car which didn't belong to the owner of the house parked on their driveway. I got the girls into my house and locked the door. I instructed Elena to take a photo of the car and its license plate, and I told Jess to call 911, as she could give the operator more information than I could. Elena took the pictures, and we sort of gathered around Jess as she was speaking to the operator. She had finished telling the story, and I heard the operator assure us that police would be at my house soon. A few minutes passed, and there was a loud knock at the front door, followed by a loud voice shouting, "It's the police!" We all had a sigh of relief as I went to open the door. Jess told the operator that the police were here and she hung up. I was in the process of unlocking the door when I thought to look through the spy hole at the top of the door. I peered through, and it wasn't a police officer. It was the same guy. I froze in fear and I didn't know what to say. "We didn't call the police!" I managed to shout back to the man through the door. Elena and Jess were both confused as to why I said this. "We had a call, sir," the man shouted back. "You have the wrong address!" I yelled back and informed the girls that it was a creep at the door, not a police officer. Both were rightfully shocked and extremely scared as I was. I was about to tell Jess to call the police again until I heard sirens. "Sir, you have to let me in," the man shouted again. This time I didn't answer. He was pounding on the door. His commands for me to let him in turned into begging and pleading. I heard the police car pull up and some commotion outside. An actual police officer knocked on the door and I let him in. Yes, I checked the spy hole first. The police officers took the man into custody while another police officer took Elena and Jess into the dining room for some brief questioning. I called my parents and Jess called hers. Both were here extremely quickly once we told them what was happening. The man was found with a kitchen knife on his person and some other weapons in his car. Who knows what could have happened if I hadn't looked through the spy hole first. Both my sister and her friend are fine, just shaken up after the whole incident. So, guy who stalked my sister and her friend, let's not meet.